have with us today Dr. H.D. Odum. And Dr. Odum, we're delighted to welcome you and to have this opportunity to talk with you about the development of your scientific and professional interests and of your intellectual career and what you're thinking about now and where your work is going in the future. And I wonder if we could start by your telling me a little bit about where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in University town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and my father was a sociologist. And
yes, indeed, he was a very well-known sociologist.
And he was a pioneer, and I think he's had some kind of overall concept of system, although in those days they call it social institutions.
Do you think that he influenced you in becoming a system scientist or a general system scientist as you are today?
Obviously, I was much dedicated to him, and he used to say, go out and get some new techniques from the sciences and bring them back to the problem of humanity and nature.
Well, now, you were interested in systems of various sorts, social systems as well as biological, I know, but your interest, fairly young, turned toward ecological systems. How did that happen? What was the influence that brought you into that?
Well, another important influence was my elder brother, who's 11 years older, and as he began to go into the brand new field of ecology, he'd teach his younger brother, who was still in high school, and so I'd go around studying birds and things like this as he did.
And later on, when you got trained as a biologist, I suppose you probably helped him out a little bit in return as years went by.
When I went to Yale, and we taught him some new things that he hadn't learned at Illinois, and so on, vice versa.
Now, see, where did you get your formal education?
Well, I took the A.B. at North Carolina, and then the Second World War came on, and I was very fortunate in getting in meteorology training, with its engineering mathematics, and so 3 years in this, and
military life can be an education in itself, and in addition,
right.
If you have a specialty like that, it could help a lot.
And also, you learn with meteorology that what happens here locally is not a function of anything you can see, it's a function of a next larger system. And so you get used to looking to the next larger pattern to understand what is local.
And so you think in those days you were beginning to think in terms of hierarchies of systems in some sense?
Yes, and of course biology has a rich tradition of hierarchical teaching in a verbal language, and so it became obvious that there was some possibility here to combine these fields, and that of course Yale was rich with the concepts of theory, and that there must be theoretical understanding.
When did you go to Yale and receive your doctorate? What
that was after the war, and went there and got married and things like that. And and we had Evelyn Hutchinson was a great teacher and taught you at many levels, and you learn to think that it's all right to make calculations about the world when your data is slim.
I remember after that you went to Florida, is that correct?
Yes, at the university. And
now tell me how your original scientific studies developed, and sort of trace them for me, if you can.
So we've found ourselves in an area of marvelous environments, and the question was, how does the ecological system work? And so we started looking at the Silver Springs River, and began to look at it and try to understand it, and began to develop diagrams and try to ask how the new concepts of energetics and information could help us to understand.
Did you get interested in the Okefenokee Swamp, too, while you were
We
down
have
there?
done that later. We have a Center for Wetlands now, which is doing research in swamps.
What sorts of principles did you get out of your studies and emphasize?
Well, the big question soon was, with the new ideas of irreversible thermodynamics coming along, was at what rate does the world go? And we began to realize then that there's a possibility there's at one rate it runs at, and that's the one that maximizes power. And there was an inverse between the power and efficiency. So systems survive, and by the ones that survive are those that maximize their energies. And that theory we then discovered has already been stated many times by Lotka and Boltzmann. And anytime you discover a theory of your own first and then just find it in the literature, you really do believe it.
Well, I believed it too, because in my earliest systematic papers on system science, I referred to the classical article of Odum and Pinkerton. I understand that Pinkerton died at some time after that, and so he did not continue in the field, but you did. And that article of yours, which I've often made use of, indicated a range of different situations in which systems maximize power. Now, can you give us a little description of the sorts of systems that you think about that are good illustrations of this principle?
Well, we began to formulate a series of corollaries, and that this applied to muscles and physiology and ecosystems, and then we began to look larger to systems of man and nature and to those of economics. And the predictions agree in large measure with what people in these fields, but gave a second reason for things. And for example, in economics, the tradition has been to take value from what an individual wants, but we began to realize that the individuals and their free choices are the way by which the larger system of society finds the energy pattern that works. So in effect, we began to realize that we had an energy theory of value, and so this has been and also a way to predict what the national system will do, and to relate it to war and to peace and history and so on.
Well, you have very wide-ranging applications in your mind then, and I can see you're dealing with the question of freedom and determinism. Perhaps your father's interest in sociology had something to do with concentrating your thinking about that. Now, actually, this principle applies, as you indicated in that original article, to non-living systems of various sorts as well.
Quite right. And then we
For example, what about, can you give some examples of that?
Certainly. The beach also builds structure with which to improve its ability to catch the wave energy. And a fire builds a concentration of heat and feeds it back as its kindling temperature to catch more energy. So we began to realize that the essence of life, if you like, is in fact in the design of the system, and when you go to the planet, you shouldn't be looking for microbes. You should be looking for things which have autocatalytic structure and process energy in these ways. In fact, I went to graduate school. I was going to study the secret of life, you know, and then I soon found, in the midst of a biochemistry course, I said, "My goodness, the secret of life is it's a system." And there's no secret. It's just a darn good system with very good self-regulating mechanisms. And so if you're going to study the principles of theory of systems, let's go back to one where you can see the parts and we don't have to work so hard to get the data. And so we went back to the ecosystem then rather than biochemical one where it's so difficult.
Well, I begin to see that you're thinking of associating these biological and non-living systems with economic systems. I think that's very important personally, and that perhaps is part of the way of the future. But there was a famous economist by the name of Adam Smith who, when he asked himself what was the nature of the economic system, talked about the unseen hand. In other words, there was nobody that was arranging it. It arranged itself, and that's another way of saying what
Exactly.
you just said.
In fact, one of the principles of the unseen hand is maximum power principle. And
oh, really? No. Did Adam Smith talk about that?
no, I don't know. I'm a substitute that works for me.
I see. Well, I thought you were going to tell me something.
But there's so many things in economics. The Pareto income distribution is really an energy hierarchy principle, and so the relationship, it helps to indicate the balance between the political right and the political left, and many things that can come from understanding the way systems survive.
Well, now, I have referred on my own authority, and I don't know whether you would agree or not, to your use of this principle as a cross-level hypothesis, which you have tested and found evidence for at various levels of living systems.
Exactly.
Would you accept that?
Oh yes, we have graphs from quantum chemistry and from the stars and almost levels in between. And I suspect that when we get around to looking inside the physical nucleus, we may find that there's a hierarchy in there also. And you know, if you should take an ecosystem and shoot it with a shotgun, you'll get a bird flying here and a fish there, and that's the way the physicists are dealing with their world in there. I think they need to look at it as a network.
Now, are there quantitative differences at different levels which you can demonstrate by empirical observations or measurements about in this process of power maximization?
One of the correlators that we're excited about and discussed at this meeting is the property that systems that separate their production from their consumption and pulse their consumption are the ones that maximize power. So that produces oscillations, and it's those oscillations then that have a period that's proportional to the size. So big things have long periods and little things have small things. And so this may even explain what we call noise and randomness. And so we're not so sure that randomness is the way the universe works, but you get patterns that fit statistical distributions because the way the maximum power principle causes hierarchies to form. So
You have also studied the pulsing at these different levels.
Yes, and of course one of the most interesting ideas is that the great production of geological process bringing fuels and minerals to the surface is followed by an intensive consumption period by humanity. Humanity can do anything because it can be reprogrammed to do anything. So it is programming itself as in the order of things to be a giant consumer. And so if it consumes its way past what we might think is good common sense, it may be serving the biosphere by getting the fuels out of the ground, circulating them, being a better geological process back into so as to set up the next cycle of production again, so that our immediate future, which is to consume ourselves up and then all the way to the bottom, may be the pattern of things. And so we're having to consider that hypothesis because it's symmetrical with other systems, that ecology systems that have pulsing of spruce budworms and grasshoppers and fire, and the spread of Genghis Khan is an example on a larger scale, things like this.
Now, how do these orders of magnitude of these measurements progress from lower, less complex levels to higher complex levels? How do the magnitudes change?
We don't believe there's any difference in complexity at any level.
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned that in doing some spectroscopy. The percent error is always the same at every concentration, and so it's a matter of we see too much. And that's why we have so much trouble at the social and ecological level. We see too much. So backing off and learning to simplify. And so we invented this energy circuit language to help do this. And
now, what do you mean by energy circuit language?
It's an attempt to make a network diagrams that put all kinds of fields together that combine kinetics and energetics and economics and other fields. So, and we try to draw from other people's systems languages and take the best. So we're trying to get a common language so that everybody can speak. And we've been doing that in AAAS Chautauquas, for example, where we'll have historians and mathematicians who normally can't talk meaningfully to each other, but the historian follows our diagram of culture, and that diagram is automatically a differential equation, and so the mathematician is reading it also.
But again, to get back to this question of magnitudes, in the actual observations and measurements, is there a way that the higher level systems, the social systems, differ in terms of the any quantifiable aspect of this?
Yes.
What direction is that? How do the magnitudes differ?
We use this concept of embodied energy, the energy at one level it takes to make something at the higher level. Mm-hmm. So as the actual energy goes down, as one goes up a food chain from the grass to the sheep to people to cities to our great leaders and to culture and things, when we get in that area, people say, well, there's such a tiny amount of calories there. That's obviously calories aren't correlated with value, but the energy it took at the lower level to make it is greater. The higher the value, the less energy, the more energy it took to make it. So we have this lovely paradox which mixes the public up. The more energy, the less energy. The more energy it takes, the less actual energy there is.
Well, now I know that you have been interested in the concepts of entropy and information in all of this. And how do you see that these two concepts fit into your overall approach?
Well, the flow of energy is required to build these hierarchies, and these hierarchies are measurable by information theory or information quantities. So since there's an energy requirement for information, and it goes up very fast as the permutations of the books in the library become more numerous. Not only retrieval, but the maintenance goes up. So the Bucky Fuller's great idea of doing more with less by just putting everything in the form of information has a limit, because the ecosystem, as we've learned just by going and studying DNA, for example, does not continually build up information. It only carries a certain amount. So if we have a lower energy period, we're going to have to choose about how much information we can carry forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, you have said that you see the current trend to combine the concept of entropy with basic concepts in economics as a potentially promising and interesting one. Tell me what you think about this now, and about the various people that are thinking in these terms.
Well, I think the energetics is going to be added to economics in due time as the ultimate determination of value. Explains why the market system makes the system effective, because it's making power maximize. And so we can do a lot with energy to combine the values of the externalities, that is the non-economy part of man and nature. And the word entropy is it's a difficult concept, and it's easier just to talk about potential energy being used and maximizing the flow of energy, although you can divide through by temperature and call it the flow and generation of entropy. And so either way, it's all right, but there's no magic in that word.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of confusion, because the word order sometimes refers to simple things of low entropy, and other times it refers to complex things which have a big difference of entropy from the surroundings. So they use order for near equilibrium and for far away from equilibrium, and the same person may do it in the same lecture.
Do you think it's true that if you look at the problem of energy from the point of view of the entire Earth, that the economic issue of the future, perhaps the primary economic issue, is going to be the increasing shortage of available energy?
Well, I think there's a shortage of this stored energy, and we are pulsing it and bring it down, and then we'll come back to running on a steady pattern of renewable energy. So I'm not at all gloomy. I think it's a beautiful thing to look forward to, leading the way down. We call it the green way down. But it does mean if you want the same standard of living, we're going to have to cut our population in the U.S., for example, certainly to 1/4. But that we have so many wasteful things that won't be hard. And I think the U.S. Can do a great job leading the world, but not leading them up, leading them down.
Mm. You say it won't be hard to cut the population by 1/4?
I think there are all sorts of ways in which the great system operates, and as long as energy is expanding in the world, the population system keeps expanding with it. It doesn't really start to respond to turn down it until the energy's turned down, and it does so through various mechanisms. So I think it will, through in some places consciously, and in a few places because they get the message through local famines and whatever. I think it will turn. It just takes one generation to get a population down. If nobody bred for one generation.
What is the role of living systems, biological and social systems, ecological systems, and so on, in the utilization of energy? Is their presence on this particular Earth affecting the rate of energy consumption, and in what way do you think it's doing it?
Well, there are means by which stored evolution and progress of the past is stored in such so that they act as great catalysts to make processes maximize power more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So they're also the memory, the Earth's surface and the living system, both are the two memory sources of the biosphere. But the biosphere works as a unit, and human pattern is there only so long as it serves the biosphere's needs. We don't know this always, but we'll fit the pattern. If you handle the biosphere well, you'll have jobs, not vice versa.
Well, I know that Voyager and the other exploratory satellites that are going out into space keep sending back reports as to what we are finding on other planets, and perhaps someday they'll get farther out than the solar system. And but as of now, they've found lots of interesting things on other planets, but they haven't found clouds of pollution, at least of our particular kind of pollution, elsewhere. Isn't it the fact that the particular problems that we have in relation to energy utilization, like pollution, are problems that relate to the presence of the biosphere on this particular planet?
Well, I see that as a problem in scale. Things that are smaller than the world we look about us are called noise, and things that are pulsing and spreading that are part of a larger system, they come at infrequent intervals and infrequent places, and so they seem unexpected. We call them catastrophes or pollution. So I'm not sure, but they aren't in the pattern of things. That is to say, humanity first took over the metabolism of the forest, and then the farms, and then the land, and now it's taken over the minerals, and it's become a major geologic. The output of our stacks is greater than that of the volcanoes as far as acid. So we're doing a better job at being a volcano, and so when we come dumping these acids down locally, the effect is severe as it is on a volcano. But the ultimate effect is to improve the circulation of the minerals in the biosphere.
Your name has been associated primarily with this principle of power maximization, but I'm sure that you've been concerned with many other principles. You certainly don't limit your thoughts to that one particular principle.
No. Our real thrust is that there's a uniformity of systems of nature, and as in your work, and we have the same aims, and particularly in this matter of hierarchy, and that so that we use energy only as one very effective common denominator in helping to combine all of the things that we recognize important.
Well, I do think, now that you mention it, that we have the same aims in a number of directions. That's one. I think another one is you say you're trying to get a common language for these different fields. I don't insist on my language, and I'm perfectly happy to take somebody else's, but I do think it's important that we get a common language.
That's right, and we must quit being reductionists and saying you do kinetics here and economics there and energetics there. They must all be in the same language.
And I do not like to have approaches to problems such that leave out whole important areas of human knowledge, such as the biological sciences or economics or the law or physical science for that matter. And I think you're the same way, and so there are a lot of commonalities in addition to the fact that we each call ourselves system scientists. Well, now what do you see in the future? Where is your own personal research going to go from here on, and where do you think this type of research is going to go?
Well, we're in an academic scene. Of course, we keep our students coming, and we try to make sure they get some founding through what we know best, the ecological system, but then in each case we try to have a general principle, such as new questions like are high-quality energies more easily transportable, or is this pulsing, can that be used to predict the future of the economy? I think energy and foreign trade, we've discovered that dollars are not a measure of the value of foreign trade. It's the embodied energies, and that countries are chipping themselves as much as 100 to 1 sometimes when they make a dollar exchange. And
is that really so? Can you give an example?
Example would be phosphates sales from Florida, the embodied energy, the work that nature did in generating the phosphorus, and it will have to do when it's gone in those storages, is 29 times more than the dollars we receive for it in the energy equivalent. So if you keep it and put it on your own soils, you'll stimulate your economy 29 times more than if you sell it to somebody else and buy their dollars and get fuel with it.
Well, are you making recommendations to the appropriate government officials that they reprice
the DOE cut us off from they supported AEC, and the DOE supported us for 15 years, and then they started making these kind of recommendations which were against their policies. They cut us off.
This disturbs the bureaucrats in the Department of Energy, then, doesn't it?
Well, I think then there's the way that works is, but then the next round, bureaucrats are more willing to look, and I think they're ready now to realize that there's a real world of energy controlling their future.
What other major future scientific approaches do you think are going to be promising and valuable?
Well, I think we ought to join in with some of the cosmologists and check, see if we think the equilibrium and open steady state, open systems are not as different as people have made them out to be, and that there are hierarchies in closed systems as well, and in the universe, and the pulsing of stars in the universe is another special case in the hierarchies. And then we also need to get with physicists and look inside the physical nucleus to see if we can't help them make sense out of that.
Well, nobody could accuse you of having less than fully ambitious goals if you go the whole way from the nucleus of the atom and cells, ecological systems, to the entire cosmos. But I think that's justified, at least in the light of the people that I find referring to your work, because there certainly are a wide range of disciplines that are now referring to your work far beyond ecology. And obviously your mind is moving into many of these other areas. Have you had long discussions with Carl Sagan about this, for example?
No, I've never met him.
Well, I would think he
sometime.
would have an interesting opportunity to talk about what he calls these billions and billions of light years, you know, and so on, and whether they pulse at the right rates and so on.
I think that's right. I think maybe their faith in that of NASA is yet to be seen, whether we have enough net energy to do very much with this current cycle of fuels. I think we will not be able to, and we better, some of the nonsense about energy processing through satellites and so on. Our net energy concept, by the way, is one of the practical things that has been picked up by the federal government. There's a law written, Senator Hatfield, based on our work. So.
Well, Dr. Odum, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and it's really fascinating. I'm sorry we have to stop now, but we've gone over a very wide gamut of things, and it's interesting to see that you are just not talking in terms of theory. Far from it. You found hard data to indicate the fact that there are these cross-level formal identities or similarities which are significant.
It's the real world that counts, and our idea is just to help us understand it. The real facts are out there. We have to always check.
Right. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you.